Are you having trouble finding high quality work at an affordable rate? Or are you struggling to implement the kind of lifestyle design that you hear about and read about in books like The 4-Hour Workweek? Hey there, I'm Brady with brandbuilders.io, and today I want to talk to you about how to hire a virtual assistant on Upwork. These are the same tactics we've used to outsource a huge portion of our jobs, pretty well everything except for the marketing budget in Brand Builders. This is the same tactics we've used to create teams of virtual assistants to make maximum passivity for the Brand Builders team. So hit the like and subscribe buttons below and keep watching to the end to figure out how you can hire an all-star virtual assistant. So the way this video is laid out is first we're going to talk about my top 3 tips for hiring virtual assistants. And since that all starts with your job posting, then we're going to move to the screen and where I can show you how to create an amazing job post on Upwork that's going to get quality and affordable hires every single time. And then we're going to come back to the kind of talking head that you're seeing right now, where we're going to flesh out some more of our ideas in regards to ensuring success for your virtual assistants and creating maximum passivity on your end. So the first tip I have for hiring amazing people on Upwork is be super specific in everything you do. So this starts with the job posting. Be hyper specific in regards to who you're looking for and what success looks like in the role and what the expectations are, what their responsibilities are and your responsibilities are as the boss. Be hyper specific as to the tasks that they're going to be doing and where their strengths should lie, and then be specific about the pay as well. And then any future work you do with them, once you have hired them on, be very specific about the things you want them to do. The fact of the matter is that there are very few people in the world who can think what I call next level, who can not only do the job that you ask them to do, but foresee future problems and solve those as well. So that means when we talk to our VAs, go ahead and be hyper specific in regards to what you want them to do and what success looks like. The second piece of advice I have for you is to give your virtual assistants everything you can to make sure that their job is a success. So this means all of the training and resources, but it also means time. You can expect, depending on the complexity of your task, you're going to need to set aside, say, 1 week to 3, maybe 4, maybe 6 months of training time. The tasks that we have our virtual assistants doing at Brand Builders are hyper complex. We're in month 3, month 4 for some of our virtual assistants, and they're still learning, and that's okay. So if you're expecting complex tasks, give your VA some time to learn that role and excel in that role. But if your task is something that's super easy, don't accept any excuses. So give your virtual assistant all that he or she is going to need without being a pushover. And my third tip for success with VAs and hiring VAs is you want to hire fast and you want to fire fast. There's just no other way around it. It sounds cold, like, oh, this horrible entrepreneurial capitalist businessman. But the fact of the matter is that some hires are amazing and some hires just don't work out. And what I found is that when a hire isn't working out, it's often not because the person is bad. We have had a few true bad people like try and steal from us, but 99% of the time, it's just because the job is a mismatch with what the VA wants to be doing and their skill set. So it could be that you're asking the VA to do a job that he or she just doesn't like, and if he or she just doesn't like it, then they're probably never going to be very good at it. So it's best to cut off those bad hires pretty quick, but it's also good to not get analysis paralysis and spend forever trying to find the perfect hire. You will be very surprised at who can succeed in your VA role. Even people who you think, oh, they're never going to do a good job, they can often end up being your best hires. Now, the founding place for your hiring VAs, your building block of hiring amazing virtual assistants, is going to be your job post. Your job post is going to determine who applies to your job and how good your overall quality of a virtual assistant you get. So let's hop over to the screen and I'll show you how to hire an amazing virtual assistant on Upwork step by step, including my template. So the first thing you're going to need to do to hire a virtual assistant on Upwork is create a client account. When you sign up for Upwork, it's going to ask you if you want to be a client or a freelancer. You want to be a client, and then your home screen is going to look something like this. So you want to come here to where it says post a job, or you can go to jobs and then post a job. The one piece of advice I have when it comes to creating a job post on Upwork is that you want to be as honest as possible. So short-term or long-term, you determine that. I'm going to say long-term for this one. And then the name of your job post is the only place where I recommend being pretty generic. In my experience, the more generic your title is, the more applicants you're going to get.
The more applicants you get, the better chance you have of hiring someone who's a superstar. So I like to put something like VA and administrative assistant needed, just something that's super generic. And then Upwork's gonna ask you to pick a job category. You can pick pretty well any of these. I'm gonna go with virtual or administrative assistant. Now, your job description is going to be the thing that really seals the deal for people who are applying to your job. Having an excellent description is the best way that you can get players to apply to your job. Now, I recommend keeping this pretty short. A few lines is fine, but you want to be pretty descriptive and detailed in what you're looking for. So this is the template that I follow here. I like to first have an intro introducing myself. I don't like to mention the business. I just like to say who I am, and then I like to say who I'm looking for. So for a virtual assistant, I might say something like, I want you to be someone who loves making other people happy, or whatever. And explaining, do I want to see work experience? Do I want to see X other jobs on Upwork or whatever? So tell them who you're looking for. And then the expectations. So this is going to include what you're going to provide and what they're going to provide. This is where we talk about having our test project and interview. We're going to discuss these later in the video, so keep watching. And then what you're going to be providing to them. Money. One thing I like to do is put a range. So say I'm looking for a virtual assistant in the $5 to $8 per hour range, or whatever your target is, and then say what the next steps are going to look like. If you apply, this is what we're going to do. I'll send you a message, we'll chat, we'll have a test project, we'll have a test interview, etc., etc. And then I like to close my job interview by thanking them and giving them a little call to action. If this sounds like something you would like, then please do apply. Thanks so much, and excited to talk to you later. Something like that. So you can scroll down here and go to the next screen, and then the rest of this job post is just going to be you being pretty honest. So one-time project, ongoing, complex. I put most of mine as ongoing, and you can do a screening question. This is just sort of an additional filter on your job post. I don't think that I've used one in the past for a virtual assistant. I have used one. And then once you get into the expertise, visibility, budget, and so on, you just want to be as accurate and honest as possible here. So these are optional. I do recommend filling these out because it's going to help put your job in front of the right people on Upwork. So you might want to say something like an executive assistant, personal virtual assistant, something like that. They're going to be good at communication, data entry, and email communication. Deliverables, like product in. I'm just making these up. Perfect. And then any additional skills, like, yeah, whatever. Just fill these out as needed and then go to next. One piece of advice here is that I recommend putting who can see your job as anyone. That's just going to give you access to as many people as possible and allow you to filter through the applicants. Do you need one or more? And then depending on the virtual assistant, you're going to want to pay by the hour or a fixed price. You can decide that for yourself. Level of experience, of course, level of experience and how long is this project going to last, very much dependent on you. Time requirement, very much dependent on you again. If you're paying a fixed price, then it's going to ask you if you have a specific budget set. In my experience, it's best to put this higher as opposed to lower. So something like $100. And then I've never had a freelancer be upset as long as I describe in the job listing that, hey, we're going to have a $5 paid trial or whatever. But pick your settings that work for you, and then you can go to next and then review your job post. And then this is just kind of a final look. Once you have looked at this and decided I like it, you can hit post job now.
Once you have your job posted and you got that filled out, it's best to wait between like 6 and 24 hours for your virtual assistants to apply. That time gap just allows people to apply and keeps you from filtering through 6 and then filtering through another 10 later and whatever. This way you can get somewhere between like probably 15 and I've had up to 80 people apply to a job before. Just give it a few hours and you're good to go there. But once you have these people who have applied, it's time to start filtering them. And if your job posts are like my virtual assistant job posts, you're going to have a lot of filtering to do. A lot of people want virtual assistant jobs. There's no super fast and super easy way to filter through double digits worth of people. Once you get past, for me, it's like 20, 30, they really start to kind of blend together. So just some quick tips. First, if anyone applies to your job and says, "Dear Sir/Madam," that just means they didn't read it. For most virtual assistants, you're going to want someone who's pretty detail oriented. So for me, that's a red flag. If I see "Dear Sir/Madam," thumbs down, no good, out. Okay, next person. Once I've filtered out the dear sir, madams, and filtered for the previous job approval rating, anything above, say, 75% is fine with me, then I like to open up their job proposals and scan for good English. Your virtual assistant is going to be your right and maybe even your left hand. They're going to do pretty well everything in your job. They are going to be your extensions of will. So if they don't speak good English, or they don't speak good whatever your native language is, then that just opens up more and more and more probability that they're not going to understand some of your instructions. And then if you build a team under your virtual assistant later, when your jobs expand and your team is going to be communicating in English and your virtual assistant isn't great in English, then it's just a mismatch. So if anyone doesn't speak awesome English, I like to filter those out. Once you find someone who you like, who you think this could be a good fit, I like to do two things. So I like to send them a message and ask them if they would be okay with a test interview and a test task to do. The reason I like to have that test interview and test task is because the interview is going to give you an excellent bird's eye view of who this person is, of what drives them and what motivates them, and how good they're going to be in your role. And if the interview goes well, then I'm happy to assign a test task to them. And the task in the interview very much depend on what your job is going to be. So my basic kind of interview structure is I like to ask them about themselves, like to have a little bit of small talk, not too much. My interviews come in under 15 minutes. I like to tell them who we are and kind of the jobs we're going to be doing, ask them if they're going to be familiar with some of the systems we're going to be using. So if we're using Asana or Trello or Google Sheets, get a picture of how familiar with those they are. And then one thing you always want to look out for in your interviews is when someone interviews you, because A players know that they're a player. An all-star, amazing virtual assistant is going to know that he or she is amazing. They know for a fact that they're awesome. And A players don't work for B bosses. So when the VA starts to ask you about your business and ask you interview type questions, take that as an amazing sign, because this person is not just someone who does the job that's assigned to them, but they're someone who falls in love with their work, who falls in love with their business, who can be a team player, and who is interviewing you to see if you and them are going to be a good fit. If you can find that kind of person, they're very likely to be an A player, and I think you can do pretty well with them. And we've had exceptional success by hiring people who start to interview us. And then if the interview goes well, some will not go well, and you can just say right then, this is not going to be a fit. Thank you so much for your time. If the interview does go well, then I like to assign them a test task. Now this test very much depends on what their future job role is going to be. So I might have them write some kind of report up on a situation of current events or whatever to get an idea of how good is this person at researching, how good is this person at writing. I might do some sort of task where I send them a fake customer service query and I say, I want you to respond to this as best you know how, or whatever. And then if the person passes the interview and they do well on the test task, it's time to go to hire fast, fire fast. Just hire them, get them in the job, get them on the ground, and see how well they do. If they don't do well, then you can fire fast. But one thing to always keep in mind with your VA is that you want to give them every single resource they need to succeed. And what this amounts to once they are working for you is feedback. You need to give detailed and comprehensive feedback. Tell your virtual assistant what he or she's doing right, and tell him or her what they're doing wrong. And this is going to go a long ways towards improving the quality of work you get. What I find is that when you don't give negative feedback, so hey, you did X or Y wrong, then the quality of work always tends to decline. And then one thing that's worked super well for me and my team is to create videos for your virtual assistants. We use Loom or Jing for this. We used to use Jing, now we're moving to a software called Loom. It's free, it allows you to record your screen and then share a link where others can view that as well. I like these video tasks because they make it super easy for your virtual assistant to follow along and do exactly what you're saying. Now, you might have noticed that if you're giving feedback and you're showing your VA what to do, this doesn't sound very 4-hour work weeky. I have read The 4-Hour Workweek multiple times. I think it's a great book. I have never in my life had the experience or met anyone who has been able to find a virtual assistant who is so thorough and so good that you can just hand your life over to them, as is described in The 4-Hour Workweek. Is As far as my experience and the experience of those who I know and work with go, you can throw the virtual assistant advice in books like The 4-Hour Workweek out of existence. Virtual assistants are awesome in helping you automate and systematize processes that need a human touch, but they do need management. I'm not saying it's not doable, I think it is, but you have to invest a lot of time and energy and expenses on the front end to get your virtual assistants in the place where you want them to be. So expect to lay out templates, expect to give detailed instructions, expect to have some sort of a weekly meeting and possibly even daily reporting, something like that where you can track tasks and make sure your virtual assistants are doing the jobs that you hired them to do and they're doing them in an effective manner. And then my last piece of advice comes more from personal experience. Don't give your VA too much trust right off the bat. You want them to become a part of your team and you want them to fall in love with the mission that your business is providing. But the only time that a virtual assistant has ever tried to rob me, and it only has happened once, it was when I gave him too much leeway right off the bat, when I should have waited much longer to get him involved in our systems and waited much longer to really outsource a lot of the work to him that I ended up doing. So that's my last piece of advice there. So just to recap, you want to be hyper specific. You want to give your virtual assistant everything that he or she needs to succeed. And then you want to hire fast, fire fast. And really, if you get those 3 things down, you'll figure out the rest as you go. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.